it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Hi everyone, here we go then, on our way now to the end. I feel like it's starting to feel a bit spring-like now, finally, with the days definitely growing longer. I'm up with my daughter at 5 a.m. It's light out, which is good, rather than kind of being like, oh my lord, it actually is middle of the night. And when it's her bedtime, we're undertaking the great deception, as we call it, involving putting blinds down, closing curtains to simulate nighttime when it's actually still daylight outside. And that's a nice analogy for these kind of final days of FPL this season. Observation, not a condemnation, but definitely feels very much the same. Double Game Week 35, mostly in the books, and FPL, at least in the engaged end, seems to have taken that Buzz Lightyear meme where there's thousands of clones on the shelf to heart, while players are dropping like flies, actually, in loads of cases, and many managers' teams are redolent of the walking wounded. Just like my daughter was asleep, my partner's not back from her exercise class yet, so if there's a cry, I may need to run for a few minutes, but hopefully not, and hopefully all good. And here to enjoy / lament this week thus far with me is Sam, one of those proud owners of a walking wounded team. You're right, mate.
Yeah. Outside of FPL, I'm absolutely grand, mate. But FPL itself has just been kicking me a few too many times recently, and more importantly, kicking my players and injuring them for the rest of the season by the looks of it. So, little bit frustrating. But if you're out there thinking, why does my team resemble Fun with Flags? Then don't worry, you're not alone. I'm in there with you, and hopefully, this podcast will either salve those wounds a little bit or hopefully give you some advice on what to do with those injured players, because I certainly need some advice as well. So in the meantime, we are Who Got the Assist. As Tom mentioned on the pod today, in a time of very similar teams, by necessity at the moment, we investigate whether there are in fact any edges left open for us to attack the final 3 game weeks of the season, or is it a case of just accepting our lot? We'll then move on to the Game Week 36 preview, of course, including bold claims. Lots of injuries flying around, as we've already mentioned. So best transfers in is really important for a lot of managers like myself, with flags pretty much everywhere. And of course, best captains, which could be quite an interesting discussion this week. I think that could be another little edge that some managers could find. So a good chat on that later on in the pod. It is the 29th of April, no game tonight, so no live reaction. I don't know whether you enjoy that or hate that, but there won't be that tonight. Spurs-Chelsea will go on in a couple of days' time. And of course, then we'll have a fast turnaround to the Friday deadline after that game is over. Hopefully, in the meantime, though, this pod will be able to assist you for now. Shall we move on to scores on the doors, Tom?
Yeah, let's look at it.
I think you're first up, unsurprisingly.
Yep, so I'm in Club 51, as is pretty much the majority of FPL at the moment. I had a quick sort of scan through the mini leagues this morning, and it was just like, wow, like literally everyone's got around the same score. I've not got quite the same players as wildcarders, but damn near close. Basically, the random news out of nowhere that Foden had been struck down by an illness means that I've got Semenyo coming off the bench for a 2-pointer, which takes the 49 -4 up to a 51 -4. Basically, in the end, I did 2 transfers, as I was discussing last week. Salah and Barnes went out, and Gordon and Bruno Fernandes came in, which was obviously very good because neither of Barnes nor Salah started. Salah, quite surprisingly, in fact. So I kind of ended up with a net +6 points out of that. Bruno Fernandes getting the 4-pointer from chances created. I'm a little bit miffed I didn't walk away with double digits in that one. Like anything that he'd have done, he'd have been kind of free bonus. Really like dominant performance, really. Either that or an epic points dodge, depending on the way you look at it. And Anthony Gordon doing Gordon things. I am points down on that Barnes decision a couple of weeks back, to the tune of kind of 4 points minus whatever the hell else Barnes scored versus Anthony Gordon 2 weeks ago. Which we'll discuss in the wash-up, I think, at the end. So I still kind of regret that decision even now. Elsewhere, kind of usual players kind of scoring as everyone else has got. Isaac doing bits, and nowadays is not particularly the most exciting player. But we had quite a few weeks out of him when he was an exciting player, so that was very good. He is what it is. Another edge may be captaining him sometime soon. Palmer with the captaincy, pretty much anonymous versus Villa. Son with the penalty, and then at the back, Thanks, lads. Porro, Gabriel, Dallo, and Petrovic. Dallo, who is my sole differential this week, according to Live FPL. Hey, hello, Buzz Lightyear meme. With losing his clean sheet, thanks to Anana bringing it back Wolves style and smashing a player in the face, which is a bit of a pain in the ass, but hey, them's the breaks. Club 51, and I've got 4 players left who everyone else has got pretty much. Don't have Nicholas Jackson, but I do have Palmer and Petrovic, and I do have Porro and Son. Very exciting indeed. So just about clinging on to my place in top 100k, 93k at the moment. If Nick Jackson does anything basically on Thursday, then I'll probably drop out the top 100k. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I always thought this week would probably be a bit rubbish, especially taking the hit with the wild carders having obviously not done so. Speaking of taking hits, you took a fairly large one in the end.
Yeah, kind of through necessity, unfortunately. So I've still got a lot of flags now, but I did get rid of 2 of them going into this week. That was to get rid of Udogi and Lascelles, both crocked for the season since bringing them in on a wild card. There is a long list of injuries I've had to contest with since wildcarding just a few weeks ago. It has been a little bit frustrating, and even more frustrating having Shah come in, concede after 5 minutes against Sheffield United at home, and then go off injured at half time.
Yeah.
So that was part of the -8 hit. That did not go well. I am hoping that it's minor. Howe seems to be fairly tight-lipped on that at the moment. We don't really know how serious that is. I can probably hold on to him for 1 week if I have to, just to see whether it's serious and make transfers elsewhere. But that could be another issue I need to deal with, and therefore probably another hit I need to use between now and game week 37. Equally, the consistently fit Van Heck is no longer fit and has now seemingly gone down with a hamstring injury that seems to be fairly terminal for the season, you would think, because there's only 3 weeks to go. Yeah, so that's looking like a pretty likely transfer out as well. In terms of how my team actually did on the pitch, if it wasn't for the hit, it would be fairly average, 46 points. Gordon did come in for Salah. That did pay off, obviously. And I made that move after hearing that Salah was benched. So the leaks actually did help me out this week, which a couple of weeks ago did not, of course. But Foden also being completely out of the squad was a little bit of a curveball, meant that I had to rely on João Pedro, who, again, has not proved to be a very useful differential for me whatsoever. That might be something I look to attack in the next couple of weeks if I look to go on tilt a little bit and try and regain the points I've lost in the last week. But outside of that, it's basically just the Newcastle boys that did anything for me. Gordon, Isak, and Son, of course. But Son, at the ownership he's at, didn't really do too much. 46 -8, 38 net overall. And like you, got the same 4 players left to play. So not expecting a lot there. And the hopes of a top 100k finish are sadly starting to slip away a little bit at the moment, which would be a shame because I think it would be my 5th or 6th top 100k in a row. So I really wanted to hold on to that. But it looks like that might be a bit of a pipe dream at this point.
Well, I mean, this is the whole sort of nature of the pods, as we'll kind of get onto in a second. I just wanted to say with the share injury, I think that normally we chat a lot during the FPL kind of game week on the weekend, and I saw that injury, and I was just like, I'm not going to text Sam.
No,
so he'd have seen it. He'd have just been like, right, that's it. Phone down. I'm off. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But you've been so unlucky. I mean, you put a post out, didn't you, the other day about?
Yeah.
I'm sure it would be an experience which has been shared by quite a few people. I don't mean
for sure.
there, but you know what I mean. That was unintended, that particular pun, but it's insane. So since your game week 30 wildcards, you've had Lascelles, we both had that gone for the season. Udogi out for the season. Van Heck probably out for the season. Gusto, Lord knows what's going on there. Share breaking down. I mean, admittedly, Sheffield United had scored at that point, so it wasn't like it could have been worse. He could have gone off with kind of a clean sheet and perhaps kind of hopes of 7 or 8 points gone. You also were victim to the Foden switcheroo. Brought him in when he was leaked to start and didn't play. Foden, you missed him this week. You had João Pedro off the bench, and then you did get Haaland off the bench for the goal, which is okay. Everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong, hasn't it? Really, and it just feels like Yeah, sometimes you do have these sort of periods, and we spoke about it last week in the outcome bias sort of section, that you just can't catch a break, can you? And yeah, I think I definitely feel for you. Yeah, a lot of empathy for it, because I've been in that situation before, where it's something you're kind of like, you thought you're running out a road, don't you? You're down the cul-de-sac, and you're like, well, the only way I can get out of this is yet more hits. And the
Yeah.
cruel thing is that it's your defense. And I've seen quite a few people as well kind of thinking, well, I think I saw a few people who like, wild carded, and now 4 of their defenders are kind of crocked. And you're kind of thinking, crap, like I've literally the only way out of this is taking hits for players I don't really want, especially with the bench boost kind of nigh. So yeah, tough situation, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's the bench boost that does it as well. I think because of that, the hits are kind of a necessity. Otherwise, looking around, I could probably shield it and just use free transfers between now and the end of the season. There's enough depth there that I could have probably made do. But yeah, with the bench boost, obviously you want 15 playing players. And at the moment, I've got 12, maybe 13 if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
So I definitely need to make some moves, and a lot of them, that is not accounting for the more aggressive attacking moves I wanted to make to actually bring in the likes of Bruno or KDB or another striker for Pedro, something like that. So defensive first, and then figure out after that. But of course, there aren't a ton of defenders that everyone really wants at the moment. So we need to discuss that at some point. But yeah, I mean, look, these things happen. I'm not going to get too worked up over it. Next season is only a few months away, so I can look forward to that if everything keeps going wrong between now and then. But you know, we'll deal with it as we come to it. And any hits I need to take, I'll try and use them in the most logical way possible. And I'm not giving up my hopes of a top 100k just yet. I might as well give it my best shot. So
yeah, absolutely
go for it.
I mean, look, a lot of people will kind of say, hey, you know, this was part of this is why it was a mistake to go down this particular path, wildcard and 30, etc., and so on.
It's a risk.
I would contend that yes, it's a risk, but that is an extreme outcome in your situation. Whereas I seem to have gotten away pretty much unscathed. So it really is kind of particular to an individual. And it's just extreme, but overall, kind of the overall arc has been okay. And yeah, I mean, as I said earlier on, the state of FPL at the moment is that teams are incredibly similar. And we were saying before we came on, weren't we, that kind of I was reminiscing that last year with Lucy, this happened in game week kind of 27. Where everyone's team was the same, you know, that there was no real differentiation anywhere. And it always happens at some point in the year. It always does. And we've kind of hit that point now. And for obvious reason, because there's kind of one big double to go, no matter what strategy you're doing, there are going to be a certain set of players that you are going to be wanting to buy. It can kind of mean that there's definitely, I suppose, necessarily a bit of a focus on a certain set of players to the detriment of looking elsewhere. I'm just so glad that it's happened so late in the season compared to last season, which really was difficult. If you listened last year, you'll know that it was very difficult to sum up muster up the enthusiasm to kind of keep going, and we were kind of hoping for a big injury at sometimes, ironically in your case this year, Sam, but sometimes last year we were hoping for a big injury to we had something to talk about, because a lot of times it's kind of like, well, yeah, I'm just going to buy the same player everyone else is buying. You know, but yeah, it does create like an interesting sort of game state, because there's definitely a group of people this is very good for, and a group of people who it's not very good for. And if you are, I know that, for example, friend of the pod, FPL General, was saying that, you know, he's in top 50k. It's where he wants to be, all about consolidation for him. So a game state like this is perfect if you're in that scenario. Limited options, already covered off everything. Your exposure is incredibly limited. Absolutely great. Who it's not good for are those trying to obviously make their position better, which is probably the majority, I'd say. I don't think anyone's going to be particularly at the point where it has been a difficult season. So maybe there are some people like Mark who are thinking, you know what, I'm just going to consolidate now. I'm happy with where I am. Season's ending, as you said, in a few weeks. Let's just kind of go out where we kind of are. But if you are trying to, you know, force your way into top 100k, force your way to top your min league, this is quite a tough situation to be in, isn't it, Sam? Which is why, you know, we are going to be talking about what edges are left today.
Yeah, absolutely. And there will be edges to attack in the last few game weeks. Obviously, Game week 37 being the big double provides opportunity. There will be some interesting edge pieces that week, but I still think there are edges to be gained in 36 and 38. Obviously, 38 always tends to be a bit of a crazy game week as it is. It all kicks off at once. There's usually a few different random bits of rotation and players that maybe want to go out on a high for their last appearance for a club. So there's usually some weird explosive returns that week. And in game week 36, there's a number of pretty decent fixtures that maybe fall on teams that aren't doubling in 37. So they're often going to be getting overlooked this week as people try to attack 37 and get their transfers in early. And another point is that obviously teams are quite template at the moment, and most managers will put out 9 or 10 of the same 11 players this week and next week. And that means that if you're brave enough and you find an edge that no one else has thought of, that edge could be a pretty major difference for you. And that could be the difference between finishing 130, 140k and top 100k, which is coincidentally my exact situation at the moment. So I'm hoping this podcast helps me find a couple of edge pieces. But I think there's plenty out there. They don't necessarily have to be double game week players in 37 either. There's a few that I've got my eye on that I think that even though they don't have the double in 37, there's enough there for me to get excited about. And I think everyone's just going to ignore them because they don't have a double. We'll come on to them in just a bit. But
definitely there. And we said on the last pod, be monitoring where you have opportunity. And literally the next week, it suddenly became so important to discuss this after surveying the landscape on the weekend. Like, I knew that there were obviously a lot of people on the free hit 29 strategy, but I think the shift in effective ownership, I certainly was anticipating just how uniform everything was going to become. I was a bit surprised really by how the EO had shifted towards kind of I guess sort of towards our teams to some extent, and also with a few others who obviously we didn't own because of wildcarding slightly earlier. But I remember the days when Alexander Isak was below 10% EO, and now up to 83.5% for me in the top 100k. So I think, are there any edges left? Let's kind of talk a few opportunities that are potentially out there. The first one is something that we've touched on a few times with you. So making a positive of a negative, the plethora of injuries that are beholden to loads of people out there. There are lots of potential outcomes from those injuries, and as you mentioned, having an eye on certain players who maybe don't have doubles is probably a good way to go. Just because, let's look at doubling teams for a quick hot second. Newcastle defenders, well, I mean, if you haven't got one, I don't really know. I mean, I suppose you can make kind of an apologetic move toward Big Dan Burn or something like that. Burnley away. Burnley are doing all right. So am I really going to be going there? I don't know. United defence, I mean, the good fixture's kind of gone. Crystal Palace away is not on Monday night. It's not the best fixture given how Palace have been doing. The double stinks. Are you really going to be going there? Chelsea defence, we don't even need to discuss that. Don't need to discuss Spurs defence either. Man City defence is probably the only one. And I think we'll talk about that more actually in transfers in this week, because I don't think that kind of constitutes an edge anymore, especially after Gvardiol, scoring the 15 points, which is definitely alerted those people for even further to his potential. But there are areas, Sam, aren't there, to look at? And I remember that you were kind of saying that maybe kind of going back to Arsenal defence could be a way forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, 2 errors made sure they did concede twice against Spurs. But other than that, their defensive structure has just been solid all season long. And I mean, 2 of the last 3, I would say they have a good chance of getting 2 clean sheets in the last 3 game weeks. So 2 good home games. Obviously, Man United away in 37 isn't ideal, but no one could tell me they'd be surprised if Arsenal kept a clean sheet in that match. I think realistically, there's a decent chance of them keeping a clean sheet in any of those matches. I would be surprised if it was all of them, but I think 2 out of 3 is a fairly realistic expectation. So double Arsenal defence could still be on the menu, really. And I've seen a few managers go for that, even on a wild card, knowing that they need to bench boost in 37. So I think there are still opportunities there to double. The other player that's come back onto the radar for me today and it is a bit dependent on Shah's injury status. But Kieran Trippier apparently is going to be ready for game week 37. So,
you sure?
one to keep an eye on.
Wasn't he pictured going to Dubai?
Yeah, for an individual training to get himself ready for 37.
Ah,
Apparently.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it all ties
I
in.
saw that. Okay, fine.
Yeah. I'm as surprised as you are, Tom. But yeah, the some of the rumors circulating today are that they're trying to get him ready for is it Brighton? Yeah, Brighton at home is the first of the double. So yeah, maybe that could be a high upside differential at that point, because not many people are going to have him. Not many people are going to back him to be ready. So yeah, fingers crossed. Obviously, very, very dependent how he goes in Dubai. Who knows what it's going to be like for him over there. So
it has the the trolley that's brought around that smashed in. I'm pretty sure this actually happened to a player. It escapes me what player it actually was back in the days of yore. But an air host smashed the drinks trolley into this guy's knee.
No.
Yeah, and injured him even longer. On the Trippier point, there is one name I was going to bring to your attention, who is your boy Livramento, who completed 90 minutes.
Interesting, yeah.
The other week, this weekend, I should say. Pretty
because he was a doubt as well. So yeah,
I had
noticed.
90 minutes. Can obviously play when the Trippier's back. He can head over to the other side, which is probably good for him. There is kind of the Lewis Hall factor. But yeah, he had a very good game. I think it was a free key pass or something. Obviously, I can't really give anything other than he had a decent single game. But it did all right. I think he was in the BPS at one point. So very, an interesting sort of attacking option from the days of yore, and him playing 90 minutes seemingly out of nowhere is one that you could think about as well. I think he and Trippier both have the same problem though, where you should be thinking, right, okay, nice space of Newcastle fixtures overall, but if they are playing Saturday and then Wednesday, which is admittedly again quite good spacing because Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday for the final day.
Okay.
Are they going to play both of them? That would be my only kind of concern about that. Whereas, if you're looking at buying, I assume most people have got Gabriel as the chalk sort of Arsenal pick. Then shoving in Benny Blanco, Ben White alongside, that's absolutely fine. I mean, Bournemouth, Man United, Everton. Just if you see that as like kind of a triad of game weeks, compare that to Spurs player, Newcastle player. There's always kind of a but about the Newcastle players other than Dan Burn, and even then their defense has not been particularly fantastic recently compared to Arsenal's, who have. City are probably the one that you probably want to be buying from, but other than that, I don't know. I look at the fact that you're looking to replace defenders and look at the fact that all those defenses kind of stink, and you're left kind of thinking, well, maybe it's just a case of getting him a Benny Blanco and just kind of thinking, you know what, even though I'm going to be bench boosting singlers against United, that probably is all right. I don't know. I mean, is that where you're minded to go, or are you still kind of just thinking, yeah, okay, hopefully Trippier kind of comes back in?
I think I need to make a defensive move this week, almost 100%. Looking at the injuries in my side already, it's Shah, Van Heck, and potentially even Gusto as well. So I'd be shocked if I didn't make one this week, and I don't think I can go for Trippier yet. So I don't think I can get Trippier ahead of Burnley when we don't even know if he'll be back from Dubai, let alone ready to start. So that does kind of narrow it down a little bit. Arsenal assets definitely in my mind, but I don't currently have Gvardiol either, or any Man City defender, and I'm not tripled up. So I need to make a bit of a decision there on whether or not I want to triple up on City with attackers, or whether I'm happy to bring in a City defender, knowing that the risk of rotation always does exist, no matter which one you pick. So yeah, it's a pretty tight call, really, but Arsenal defenders it's just so reliable. And okay, maybe you're net down in 37 versus some of the doublers, but how many of those teams, like you say, are realistically going to keep one, let alone two clean sheets in that double? Yeah. And then outside of that, in both 36 and 38, I'd say your team looks better for having double Arsenal defense in it than any other combination of defenders. So yeah, I mean, I might take a late run at Benny Blanco, as you like to call him, or well, actually, probably just Benny Blanco. I'm not going back to Saliba now. I don't think it just doesn't seem like the upside's there.
And then also you've got the fact that I think a lot of wildcarders did keep double Arsenal defence for obvious
a lot did.
reasons. So yeah, why not? You kind of mentioned tripling up with kind of an attack as well. That might be another edge potentially.
Yeah.
So getting Foden and De Bruyne and Haaland, or getting Son, Richarlison. Actually, not going to triple Spurs stack, are you? But
No.
there are I guess other sort of potential options. So I don't know. I don't know if you would want to go this way, but you could have kind of Gordon, Isaac, and maybe Wilson, knowing what he could potentially do when he's on the pitch. If they started Isaac, Wilson, and Gordon as the front three, for example, in one of the double game week games, then that's fine within that kind of period, or at least if Wilson comes off the bench, he's got a decent, obviously not this year, he's been injured a lot, but historically he's got a very decent sort of XG per 90 going on. There are some options there really in that regard to kind of triple up in an unusual way, shall we say. I think if the defence options were better for 37, so say that kind of Arsenal Chelsea game had ended up in 37 as those of the fixture predictors were projecting, then I think there'd definitely be kind of an option to go triple Arsenal defence, for example. Yeah, maybe there's something there, but maybe it does come down to individuals within doubling teams, like punts within doubling teams. So KDB, Julian Alvarez, potentially Richarlison, Madueke at Chelsea seems to be kind of cementing his place in the squad, and Brighton as a whole seem to be a punt in general. I don't know where you go. Maybe
that's
kind
one word.
our mate Pascal Gross.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Although, did you see their goal of the month competition?
Yes, that was that was.
I don't know if I can back any. I'm a man with 2 Brighton assets in his team right now. I can tell you, I am not enjoying it. I'm not happy with it whatsoever. João Pedro is a differential with good reason at the moment, and as much as I'd love to hope that he gets a penalty and somehow gets a return on the next couple of game weeks, I'm just not seeing it. They do look like they've kind of packed it in for the season. It looks like a team very much on the beach. And who knows what the external motivations are at the moment for the manager, for the players, but they are walking wounded, a bit like my FPL side. And you do just wonder how much physical exertion they're going to put into the last few weeks if they don't really have a lot riding on it. So yeah, I mean, Pascal Gross has been phenomenal all season. He would be probably the one exception to the rule there, that if any of them are going to pull something out, then he could be the guy. Outside of that, though, I don't know. João Pedro, I took a bit of a swing at, and it's not really looking like a good punt at the moment. So I wouldn't advise anyone join me on that at the moment.
Yeah, I think with them, the state of being is very important, and as you said, it feels like they've given up the ghost, thrown in the towel. That towel's been thrown onto Brighton Beach alongside, I'm assuming, an air mattress, because that beach is incredibly pebbly. But yeah, it definitely doesn't feel kind of particularly exciting. One that does feel exciting though, and I don't know if there's going to be much facility to do this. So if I'm going to read out a midfield to you, Foden, Palmer, Bruno Fernandes / Garnacho, Anthony Gordon, and Heung-min Son. That's a midfield 5 that everyone's going to have, right?
Yeah.
But one really interesting punt, if Foden is out again, could be bringing Saka back and captaining him versus Bournemouth. I mean, that is so circumstantial. It is just if Foden is out. Because
I think he was just ill, right?
Yeah, that's it. And unless he's got like COVID or something, in which case he might miss a bit longer. I think that's probably going to be a bit far away from most people. But I did notice, as we both kind of experience as well, that there's still kind of decent-ish ownership of Saka in the top 100k or near the top kind of 150. So anything from him kind of really hurts. And I suspect that he's, if we were in the regular season right now, I think that he would be up there for captaincy this week, if not kind of a chalk captain potentially.
Definitely.
With Haaland come back from injury. So it's a consideration if you've got an injury in midfield somewhere, somehow, or you've still got Salah. then I think that going to delaying your City move for 1 week and going to Saka, if you can go through the jiggery pokery, or even if you incur an extra -4 in game week 37, he may well make up for that with the captaincy this week. I mean, that would be one that I really like to do, but it's just I can't justify it. Honestly, I just cannot see a way that I justify that. And I think that the majority of people who have wildcard relatively recently, or have worked their way to the midfield that I've described, or near about that, can't do it. But I really like that. If you can go there, that would feel like a fantastic differential, and I really, really like it. I just can't find a way to do it, Sam.
Yeah, that's the problem with going for like a 1 week punt like Saka. And the other one that I'd probably recommend if you are in a position to do so would be have a look at Havertz as well. 14 attacker returns last 11 Premier League games, playing out of position. The data is brilliant at the moment, and if you look across the season, obviously it still looks okay, but it's not representative of how good he has been recently. So if you are in the market for a 1 week punt, I would also contest that Havertz, if you really want to go differential, could be another edge even on top of Saka. The problem is, obviously, 1 week punts are going to be hard for most people because most of us are on a path towards bench boost 37. Transfers are precious, and not many of us have a complete playing and fit 15 at the moment. Even if you wildcarded last week, there's injuries for very popular players. So using one to have a 1 week punt and then having to use another transfer to get rid of said 1 week punt for 37 to get back to or close to that midfield 5 you stated. Obviously, it doesn't have to be exact, but you would have to be pretty confident that there's nothing else that could go wrong if you wanted to do a literal 1 week maneuver for one of the Arsenal boys. The other argument is, does it have to be a 1 week maneuver?
Are they not going to get chances against United?
Exactly. Like these are teams, all 3 of their fixtures, you would expect a decent amount of goals in. Okay, obviously you're probably losing ground in 37 against the 5 that we've already stated, plus KDB. But across the 3 game weeks, Havertz, Saka, I wouldn't mind it. I don't think it's like they're miles behind any of the popular template picks in the midfield 5 at the moment. They could easily still perform very, very well. So yeah, I like them both a lot. I've got Garnacho, and I'm not. He, by all accounts, had a decent game.
Come on, Sam. That is the place, isn't it? That is the place.
Tasty. Yeah, I've got another one up my sleeve in a minute that I haven't mentioned yet, but I think you're going to like it. We'll get onto it in just a moment.
Nice.
But yeah, I've got a maneuver to make in midfield. It should probably be for Bruno or KDB, but yeah, Arsenal. Interesting.
Yeah, fair play. Grab Mr. Havertz. Sorry. Right. Okay. Excellent. The other thing you potentially do is do a reconfiguring transfer, which is possibly one of the least exciting things. And it's the sort of transfer that if you moot it on Twitter or you moot it in any FPL engaged group, they're like, "What the hell are you doing? Just keep your player as it is." There's an opportunity potentially to make awkward crab moves. So something like Foden to De Bruyne to differentiate yourself.
Garnacho to Bruno.
Garnacho to Bruno, indeed. But I don't know, does that count as differentiating now? I don't know what the EO of...
Probably anti-differentiating.
I think they're about the same. Bruno is kind of...
I think Bruno's higher EO now.
I was hoping for the... Yeah, so in fact, you're kind of standardizing yourself rather than differentiating yourself. So maybe Bruno
probably getting more points.
Yeah, so I mean that's one I think that's always kind of a bit unfashionable, especially considering last year selling Martinelli for bloody Odegaard. Remember how that one went?
Oh my god!
Unless your name was Andy Martin, it was absolutely atrocious. So that comes with probably a lot of risk and maybe too much risk if you're an engaged manager to kind of deal with. Captaincy. Then is probably where we are left with a bit of differentiation. Haaland's injury scares are over. And we'll talk about this later on as well in the best captain for this week. Will he go back to being the overbearing captain, or will we see others come into the fray? I think thinking about 37 specifically, let's leave 36 till later, keep our kind of powder dry. I'm sure this is probably going to develop into a proper sort of a movement, but someone like Isaac in 37, Brighton at home, so they've got that home game, and then United away. There's going to be chances. You'd imagine that there's going to be a lot of people who just default to Haaland. He's got double game week. He's going to be who I'm going to captain, full stop. But Newcastle, very good at home, playing Man nice to allow loads of shots. And Newcastle, who Team XG, again, very healthy overall, up to fourth now, overtaken Chelsea recently, who, as Pochettino was proudly saying, have occupied that fourth spot for quite a while. That's an example.
Well.
Exactly. That is an example of the kind of thing you could possibly do to differentiate yourself over the next couple of weeks. So we'll leave 36 for the moment, but in 37, there are going to be kind of loads of people who just kind of think, right, Haaland's got double, leave it. And that may mean that you're a player down in the double game week. But if you've got your bench boost left, it means that you've still got 14 players. You lose a 15th, but you've still got 14 players. And you've also then kind of got potentially what could be a differential captain. And by differential captain, I mean a captain who's probably kind of on about 115, 120% EO, which is really, really good. I mean, if Isaac, and it's well within the bounds of possibility, has double digits against Brighton and also scores against Man United, something like that, you are laughing, unless Haaland really, really knocks it out of the park. But even then, I think you still kind of, you should be all right by owning him. So there are kind of lots of different sort of natures with captaincy which are out there. There's also kind of Cole Palmer in 37. I think on paper theirs is the best double in terms of the teams they're playing, Forest and Brighton. So there are kind of differentiating factors of the captaincy, and as we kind of mentioned, and we'll mention a bit more later, there's also, if you have Saka or can get Saka this week, he could be one. But yeah, I mean, captaincy may be one, and you kind of experienced that last year, didn't you, with Callum Wilson in 37. Whereas most people went safe. I went safe with Isaac, who only ended up with kind of the assist. There you were going mad. Or Wilson started both games out of nowhere. A hat trick and a brace. So yeah,
I don't think it was quite that good, but it was like two. I think he got two penalties in the first game.
That was it. I remember
one was like just before he was about to get taken off, and I remember like seeing the tweet saying, "Oh, they're readying the sub. Wilson's coming off," and then penalty goal Wilson. I was like, "Okay, good. I've nailed this. That's gone very, very well." Off of that over the next few weeks, and it does go both ways. It doesn't just hurt me. But yeah, I mean, these things happen, and that was a major swing for me in the last couple of game weeks that got me towards, I think, 20k last season, where it probably was looking like 50-60k before that. So yeah, I mean, these edges are still very much in play, especially in a double game week, especially with captaincy. If you go against Haaland and you get points from the player that isn't Haaland, that's all very well and good. What you need is for him to beat Haaland. If they beat the template captain, that's all you really need. And that's what will differentiate you. So if you think Isak has a relatively good chance of beating the likes of Haaland or Palmer or Son, who will all be popular captains, or at least in the discussion for captaincy, then absolutely go for it, because those are the edges you need at this point. And if you've got a gut feeling about any one of those players outside of Haaland, I'd recommend having a serious look at it if you're chasing.
Yeah, and I think that kind of is it now, because we haven't got the time really to, especially if you're not consolidating, you haven't really got the time to be kind of thinking that there's going to be hay tomorrow. You need to make the hay today. So making those captaincy kind of decisions, even if they are quite scary, could be the way to go. It depends how relatively happy you are. Like, if you kind of are just about on top 100k and you think, you know what, worst comes to worst, if I do end up here, then that's fine. And it does come down to, as you said, Sam, gut feel. Like, do I, at the moment, my mind might have changed by game week 37, but if it was game week 37 deadline tomorrow, I'd captain Isaac, for example. But do I
probably be with you on that at the moment?
Do I feel that way? I don't know. The final thing, potentially to differentiate yourself, is not taking too many hits. Even if it means you end up with a singular in 37 when you want to double it. So, for example, I've still got Tits McGee, Mr. Areola sat around, and the chances of me actually moving him on in 37, where they've got Luton at home, luckily, as I kind of planned when I got him in on my wildcard in game week 30, the chance of me actually moving him on and becoming more and more remote, because I kind of think a -4 for a goalkeeper versus just playing him in that game just doesn't feel like it's worth the calculus. But that's a very kind of individual sort of point. That the majority of kind of issues that we're going to be facing are like you're saying, where you just can't avoid it with the bench boost in 37. You need those players replaced, don't you?
Yeah, for some people, including me, I think it'll be quite popular, actually, that it will be a necessity for a lot to take a hit here and there between now and 37. Obviously, once we're out the other side of it, you do want 2 free transfers going into game week 38 generally, especially if you're looking at like one last hurrah on Salah, for instance, and you need some money shifted to do so. It would be nice. But again, I just think, being realistic, injuries are going to crop up. You're going to need to use transfers to get to a playing 15 in game week 37. And therefore, hits are very likely to be taken either in preparation for it or coming out of it to set your team up for 38 and attack the final game week. So, yeah, unfortunately for me, hits are definitely on the cards. And I think, again, if you're chasing, it's quite likely that you feel like you're a little bit behind other managers in terms of the players that you've got. Maybe you've got an injury or two as well, and therefore hits just get ever more likely. But yeah, if you can avoid taking hits and you've got fit 15 for game week 37, then that will be another good edge to have over other managers, because I'd say it's going to be popular to be taking a hit.
So we've spoken about a few potential edges there, making moves by dint of having an injury, which should differentiate you. Looking at single game week teams, I know that there's another option, Watkins, who we'll discuss in the captaincy, taking punts within doubling teams, reconfiguring transfers, making those crab moves, and captaincy. I mean, Sam, overall, you said earlier on you think that your hopes of top 100k have taken a bit of a hit. Do you think we're locked into our fate now, or do we have scope to fight? Like, are there potential gains out there, or is it are we de facto just in a bit of a slow march to the end of the season?
I like to fight. I think, why not? Like, we're here for a bit of fun. What are we really gaining from FPL anyway, unless you literally come first? Some of you might be in some money leagues or something like that. But the majority of us are just looking to get the highest rank possible. So yeah, there's 3 game weeks left. I've had really good game week ranks that will half my rank before. So it is possible. So yeah, absolutely go out swinging, because what's the point in doing anything else, I guess? Yeah, fingers crossed. The edges are harder to find now, of course, with such little time left, but any given game week can halve your rank. And we've seen that, especially in double game weeks as well. We've got one. So if you can find the right captain, the right edge piece, the right differential in that week, then that could be massive. So yeah, definitely not worth giving up yet. No. Obviously, the range of where you can get to is starting to slim down, but you definitely want to push that range to its absolute upper limit. So yeah, by all means, don't give up yet. Just keep pressing on until game week 38 is done and dusted.
Nicely put. All right, let's move on to the game week 36 preview, starting with bold claims. It's still 8-7 to me, but we could well find there's a equalizer this week after Mr. Joska Gvardiol's 15 points. I don't know. Madueke doesn't need to do very much, does he, to beat that?
No, it looks unlikely now, especially because we do expect the Spurs-Chelsea game to be quite high scoring, you would expect. So yeah, I imagine there will be points on the table for 1 or 2 of the players that are nearing that score already. So yeah, I don't think I'll get the points from it, but at least with a game to play, I'm still in contention for it. So yeah, fingers crossed. Well, actually, to be fair, not fingers crossed. I'd prefer all of my 4 players to get massive hauls and really help me out. But if I can't get that, I'll take the Gvardiol haul and call it a leveler in this instead.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I had Burnley to win against United, no, but I remember I was so close to get a result, and I wish I did. Wish I went there. But hey, yeah.
Although that probably wouldn't be bold enough, would it? But Burnley to get a result against Man United, is that bold?
I've been taking a step back and thinking about Man United. No, I'm not going to do that. Yes, it wasn't bold at all. Right,
I've heard they're a very exciting and dynamic team, though, Tom. So
that's what I've heard as well. It's not embarrassing to be getting to a cup final. It's not about the way you got there. It's
True.
just yeah.
It's about the memories we made along the way.
Exactly. Right. Okay. And this week,
yeah, I'm going for a bit of a barn burner in London. Chelsea, West Ham. I'm thinking West Ham have kind of let off the handbrake a little bit now, and it could go either way. But I'm expecting goals in this one. Chelsea, West Ham, neither are good defensively. Both are scoring decent amounts of goals. So I'm going 6+ in this one. Really, really heavy on the goals. And I think Palmer will definitely be in consideration for captaincy for me.
Fair play. I mean, I actually thought I was very close to doing. You said that, so I was like, I can't do the same one. But that was me mine for Liverpool versus Spurs. But I thought I'd go big on my one. And there's been lots of negative press about Mohamed Salah. Obviously we've all sold him now as well, so it kind of feeds nicely into our inner narratives. But I just feel like that game is going to be, as you said, a barnstormer. So I think I'm betting on a Salah hat-trick versus Spurs. I initially had a double-digit haul versus Spurs, and you advised me that it wouldn't pass the Forest test. So I'm going to just go for a hat-trick there. I can just imagine that happening. The narrative being as it is, and I can imagine kind of everything else falling out. People selling Salah this week, selling Salah last week, and everything. How you can see it happening, can't you? And X people being like, "Oh, I can't believe I sold Salah this week," and Salah reminding us that he's still the king, and all of these sort of gifts of him being deployed. And I can just see that kind of final Salah hat trick. Although they have said today, they're considering him. He's going to stay. I don't have as much. I don't take that as on face value as many people seem to be. What else are they going to say? They can't come out and say, "Oh, he might leave." They're going to say that he's going to stay. It would diminish the value of the asset if they turn around and said that they're not considering him. But I kind of agreed with the Guardian article that was saying that it might be time for him to go as well, and slots just kind of refresh and new. But I mean, we'll talk about that kind of towards the start of next season. I think if Salah's still there, that'd be really interesting, because obviously you can't really overlook him, especially even if it's a new era. But hey, cool. Right. So this week, Always Cheating refers to it as kind of a forgotten week of fantasy football, and I can kind of get on board with that. It is one of those weeks where it's the calm before the storm, the loading screen, and before you get into the game, and it's not particularly the most exciting one, but there's quite a lot of warming up to do. Goalkeeper wise, in terms of best transfers in this week, we have to discuss one thing, which is that Edison Pepsi doesn't look good, left in a sling. There's obviously an option to buy Ortega, which we both kind of wish either happened in game week 30 or happened kind of early on in the season. I said to you the other day, even though the option is there, it feels like going with a Guardiola who was just so ridiculously advanced, or a Carl Walker who got a couple of assists a couple of weeks ago, and this week got a couple of bonus and was looking pretty good defensively. That is at least the first City defender this year to go over 100 points is worth mentioning as well. Carl Walker, which is a bit crazy. I mean, there will be people looking at Ortega, but it kind of feels like that's just to fill a gap more than anything else, because you don't need the money, because most people have sold Salah, but he is a valid pick now, isn't he? Really, which is it's kind of okay.
Yeah, he definitely, on his own merit, is a decent enough pick. I think if you're looking at a goalkeeper transfer, he probably does make a lot of sense. It doesn't look like Edison's going to be okay to play in 37, looking at the pictures and the videos we've seen, and obviously the quotes that have come out. I guess the question is, though, like, how many of us by necessity need to make a goalkeeper transfer over a defensive transfer. I think in most teams there's a few defensive issues now. Obviously, I've got 3 myself, so I'm very well accustomed to those. But in not too many teams, there's the need for a goalkeeper transfer. Obviously, lower upside on those kinds of moves. And with limited game weeks to go, you probably want to, first of all, prioritize the injuries. And then secondly, prioritize the more high upside positions if you don't have injuries. So goalkeeper move seems like a bit of a luxury at this point, unless you are one of the very unlucky Edison owners out there, at which point it probably does just make sense to make that switch. Maybe there's a few Petrovic owners out there who are just a little bit sick of him generally and wouldn't mind chasing a City clean sheet instead. Although, again, if you're not tripled up on City already, I think in most cases you're looking at a defender over the goalkeeper at this point, just through necessity more than anything else.
Gotcha. Staying with Man City's defence, though, in the defender category, there's lots of double game week 34 relics being sold. Van Dijk, I think, is the top sold defender. No, I think it's Share at the moment, unfortunately, for you, Sam. 50,000 sales for him, 42,000 sales for Van Dijk, and likes of Gusto being sold due to the uncertain injury status. People still have Mikalenko, and that's best opinion, kind of around the 30k sort of mark. And unsurprisingly, Josh Guardiol, top bought-in player, 78,000 transfers in for him. Also, Cole Walker near him 60,000 mark. But I think it says it all. But sandwiching those and ahead of all the double game week sort of defenders being brought in is Jared Brampthwaite, 64,000 transfers in for him. Elsewhere, there's kind of like a Ben White sort of buy somewhere around kind of the 40k mark. City defenders wise, Gvardiol did the goal and was very advanced in the game. Walker got 2 bonus, was good defensively. I think it's difficult to kind of make a case for the likes of Ruben Diaz, who was missing due to the same illness as Foden, Stones, Akanji, Aki. It's very hard to make a case for them. So I think it's narrowly, if you're looking at kind of double defenders, Gvardiol, Walker, Big Dan Burn, potentially, and for folk like us looking at making a move this week in defence, it does feel like I'm going to be homing in necessarily, especially because I don't trust the Newcastle defence, on Walker or Gvardiol. Without being too terrible, would you mind telling me which one you were buying, Sam, so I can buy the other one? Just because I'm assuming that when you buy one, they are going to have an injury in training.
Yeah, it seems pretty inevitable at this point, doesn't it? I am more interested in Gvardiol, so definitely buy Walker. Anyone listening, he is much less likely to get injured between now and then, because I'm naturally more inclined to go with Gvardiol. But outside of that, I am also considering Arsenal defenders. I think out of all of them at the moment, the benefits outweigh the risks, I think, for Gvardiol. So I'd be pretty happy going there.
Yeah, I think you're about right. I think that there might be, and I'm sure that there'll be some jiggery pokery surrounding this. I think that there could be against Spurs in the second game of 37, a change in tactics potentially to have a more defensively minded player on the left side.
Yeah. But he is a centre back by nature, so he can do that side of it.
That's the weird thing, isn't it? Because I mean, obviously, my knowledge of Guardiola, I have not watched the Bundesliga. I've got anyone who pretended they did, just copied and pasted something off of X. But like, I know him as Football Manager as being a solid central defender, so it's a bit surprising to see him sort of reimagined as a left back in the same way that Ben White has been reimagined as a right back. So maybe there is that on the table. You might be looking at that though and thinking, well, maybe Ake would play left back in that game. So maybe then Cole Walker is the one who's nailed on to play the next few. But you know what it's like with City defence, you know what it's like with Pep. I kind of long for the days when you could just shove Ruben Diaz in there and know he's going to start. But any player... Or Cancelo, indeed. Any player is just going to be whatever it is. I mean, if I do get Walker, I'm not getting him for the attacking returns. I mean, yeah, he got a couple of assists against Brighton, but I think the XGI was like 0.03 or 4. Like, it was just ridiculously small. He's not the Kyle Walker from the Spurs days, that's for sure. But yeah, I think he is likeliest to start the last few games. So that might be where I go, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
and not just because you've endorsed Gvardiol, but either is absolutely fine. I think
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult to make a case for going with the centre backs. The one I probably would go with narrowly is a Kanji, just because he seems to have that kind of favoritism with Pep this year. It does seem to rotate around a lot, but him starting over Diaz seems to be the he has started with Diaz the last few weeks, which seems to be kind of the main kind of endorsement for Pep. He was subbed against Crystal Palace. He was either subbed or came on against Crystal Palace. I can't remember which one it was, and didn't play Man United game a few weeks back, if I remember correctly as well. So it's just not worth it. It's either Gvardiol or Walker. Walker's the ex-Mins, Gvardiol slightly more attacking, but then maybe a dropping, and yeah. I don't know. I'm hoping that Analytics FC's Man City source, if I do buy Kyle Walker, will come to the fore if needed towards the end. But yeah, Arsenal defenders, as we spoke earlier on, getting them back for the Bournemouth game, absolutely viable. It's not out. I can see a world where I buy Benny Blanco back this week, honestly, and just go with that. I really don't mind doing that at all. Yeah, as we said, absolutely fine. In midfield, Salah being sold alongside other relics like Luis Diaz, Eze, who's been injured for a while, KDB, some Fodens, Gordon, Bruno, and yeah, maybe buying Saka back would be really interesting if you're in the situation where you do have a Salah, Luis Diaz, and Eze still hanging around. We've discussed this. I think all of those players absolutely fine, no worries there. KDB, you know what it is, but the spacing is good. City are all right, and in the forwards. Again, quite straightforward. Solanke and Darwin being sold, Haaland being brought back in. With the forwards, I feel like most people are going to be locked in already to some extent, aren't they?
Yeah, the forwards, there's a strong three now that most people have got, and that would be Haaland, Isak, and then Jackson probably being the weakest of those three, but he does have the double game week and he does have decent data. Of course, a lot of managers bought him for 35 as well. But yeah, those will be the popular three. Obviously, I've got João Pedro at the moment, so I'm not on all three of those. Højlund is another outside option potentially, but I don't think anyone's really too excited by that as an option. Obviously got taken off, I think around 65, 68 minutes.
Loud boos, yes.
Yeah, loud boos there, especially when you've got Bruno as an option anyway. You don't really want double, triple attack for United. So you're probably targeting Bruno or Garnacho ahead of Højlund at this point. However, this is where I'd like to come on to my other differential transfer this week.
Is it Ollie Watkins?
It is Ollie Watkins. Thanks for the reveal.
I was saving him for the captaincy.
Yeah.
I think maybe we should. Maybe we'll turn the page to that actually.
Yeah, absolutely, we can do.
Is he going to be part of that?
Potentially. He's not part of the graphic because I thought it was too differential for that, but. I mean, he's just been absolutely sensational all season, and I've really missed owning him for the last few game weeks. And he's just gone about his work, kept getting FPL points, obviously blanked in game week 35, but outside of that, it's just been so unbelievably consistent this season. And okay, doesn't have a double game week in 37, but that third striker option, I'm looking around, I'm thinking, well, João Pedro is definitely not doing it for me. Højlund's not. Jackson, I'm really not that convinced on either, if I'm being quite honest, especially now that 35 is out of the way. Obviously, it's a different situation if you were wildcarding into two doubles. I've only got one to consider now. And that brings Ollie Watkins back onto the menu really, really decently. I think is it Brighton followed by Liverpool in the double. And again, Liverpool are conceding plenty of chances at the moment.
No worries there.
No worries whatsoever. I can't remember who it is final game week of the season. I think it's Crystal Palace, but can probably double check that. Yeah, none of those three games fill me with any sort of dread or panic. He can easily score in any three, if not all three. I think he probably is up there as one of the top 3 or 4 best striker alternatives right now. I'm really, really tempted to buy him in, especially because I've got that slot. If you've got the triple of Haaland, Isak, and Jackson, then you're probably not even considering it because you're not going to ditch a double game week player like that João Pedro, I think, is just bad enough that
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
making me quite tempted to make that move. So, yeah, I quite fancy one last ride with Ollie Watkins before the season ends.
I quite like it. I really like it. In fact, I can't do it because I've got you've got Garnacho who you can bench. I don't
Yeah,
think I can bench Bruno Fernandes with quite the same level of confidence
exactly.
of doing it. And maybe there's kind of a price quality heuristic sort of thing going on, as we've discussed in the past. But I don't feel like I could bench Bruno, whereas you can bench Garnacho.
Yeah.
You can kind of think, oh, no, he's a bit cheaper. That's literally actually it.
He's not on
And
penalties and the data's not as good. I think Bruno's just a better pick. Much better data on penalties, creating a ton of chances in great form. So you don't want to bench him, surely.
So in your situation, we were desperately looking for differentials. Like, why not?
Yeah.
A really good potential edge there. And I don't mind it at all. In fact, he was on the list as being kind of to bring it back to the captaincy, a potential edge captain this week, because there are kind of a few on the list from the kind of the standard template at the moment. Obviously, Haaland, will he go back to being the short captain? We'll discuss that in a second. Foden, again in the same game, assuming he's back and fine. Palmer versus West Ham. You back there'd be
Really like
goals in
that
that
one.
game. I can't disagree with that. Looking at West Ham's underlying XG data, which XG against data, which is still bottom three for
Also,
that.
Palmer at home has been
He
fantastic.
has been. Isaac and Gordon versus Burnley. I feel like there may be some people who go there, but Newcastle away are a very different beast compared to Newcastle at home. Is what I'd kind of throw in there.
Burnley only lost 1 in the last 8, I think, in the league.
Yeah. Isaac's last goal at home, away from home, game week 28, away at Chelsea. Since then, he's blanked against Fulham and Crystal Palace. Admittedly, they've had loads of home games. Before that, he's not been particularly fit. He's been all right, basically, throughout the course of the season. We know he's kind of there's not enough data basically to say what he's like away from home because he's not been fit for a solid amount. I do think the best captaincy is Saka at home versus Bournemouth.
Interesting.
I do. I wish I could go there, but I do really, really like Watkins away at Brighton as a pick. As you say, I think probably a bit too far to go for the captaincy. But I am myself, and we can go on to my teams in a little bit. But I'm between thinking I don't really want to go with Haaland. Because even though I'm still I think I'll kind of just be outside top 100k after this week. I really don't want to go with Haaland. I want to go with one of the midfielders, and I like Foden against Wolves. I mean, I can't remember who posted it, but like he's not played too many games recently. I think it's like two games out of the last 5, but he's got 36 points in those 2 games.
Guess which matches I had him for.
Yeah, and you can imagine that Wolves is kind of one of those. I only had him 1 out of those 2 games. PS, because that Brighton game wasn't around. You can imagine Wolves being that sort of game as well, with a myriad of factors affecting Wolves and how the game state may well be. But yeah, the armband's definitely in the past in Foden and Palmer quite a lot this week. And I really like the Palmer pick, especially because I think most people will kind of go back to Haaland and Palmer at home versus West Ham's kind of very flimsy defence. So they're giving up the ghost as well. Moyes looking likeliest to depart according to Intel in The Guardian this week. Well, that could be a really nice one, I think.
Yeah, I really like Palmer at the moment. I think when I set up the screenshot for this, we'll go into teams in a minute, that Palmer is my bus team captain. I obviously it's in my bold claims that there's going to be 6+ goals in that game. I really see it being a bit of a barn burner, being really open end to end. Palmer is going for the golden boot as well, which would be, by the way, an absolutely phenomenal achievement for a player who's barely started in the Premier League before, moving to another really big club, becoming the key man there, not even starting the season with them either, by the way, only 23 starts. It's just absolutely, 24 now, actually, sorry, but absolutely ridiculous, the returns he's managed to get. Yes, he's on penalties, but it's not like all of his goals have been penalties. He's still got great underlying data. yeah, I'm really, really tempted to just go with Palmer, especially because I am chasing a little bit. And I just think objectively he's got a bigger chance of going big with the haul this week than Haaland does. So yeah, I really like it. But there's a lot of other options out there this week, that maybe 6 or 7 edge captain options that I would definitely weigh up as alternatives to Haaland. I don't think it's as simple as just throw it back on the Norwegian meat shield just because he's back. I think there's options.
And Manon in the chat has just said that they're going with Watkins, Saka, and Gabriel as their bench boost in 37.
Absolutely fine with that.
Which is again like an example of how you can edge it, and again an example of the kind of players you want to bring in this week, captain this week, and I really like Arsenal players versus Bournemouth this week. I do feel like that's. I think Bournemouth have now. Neil Grover on Clash Correspondence was saying that they had to. That their kind of remaining cherry. Sorry, was breaching their best ever points total, and they've done that
now.
So I kind of wonder whether that will be them. I don't know what Bournemouth's beach is like, but maybe it will be them on the beach.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, it's one of my locals and favourites to go to. It's near Sandbanks as well, which is absolutely beautiful.
Isn't that where Harry Redknapp and co live? And
I've driven past his house many a time. Yeah, my good friend lives down there, or not on Sandbanks, but very close to. So he's pointed out his house to me.
No, fair play. He and Sandra are living a lovely life with their dogs. Cool. Sure all right, excellent. So moving on to our teams this week, then. Very quickly. So where am I? I have flags galore on my bench. I've got Semenyo, who sadly was stretchered off at the end of the Brighton game. His season's over, done his knee or something like that. So I think he'll be done. It won't come back until kind of the September maybe. Gusto, who knows what's going on, and I've still got Connor Bradley hanging around. I don't know what striker I'm interested in for 37, honestly. This week, I know that sounds a bit of a weird kind of tangent to start on, but I will get there. This week, I've got a pretty set front seven. Not really a problem.
Yeah.
With 37, I don't really know what striker I'm going to get. Don't want Højlund.
You can't get Jackson.
I'm not really interested in Alvarez. And Jackson seems to be the only one that is going to be of any use. So this week, I've got Gusto, who I could potentially get rid of for Gvardiol or Walker, which would then free up the striker slot for Jackson in 37. I'm not a huge Jackson fan in terms of the eye, but the underlying data is good enough. The EO is there. So I'm very likely this week to remove Gusto for Walker or Gvardiol. I'm leaning Walker at the moment, but I'm not entirely sure yet. And that would then mean that Semenyo becomes Jackson in 37 and Bradley becomes a defender somewhere. I'm not sure who they are, which would mean that I keep Areola for 37. So I end up with 2 singlers in Gabriel and Areola, which I'm fine with.
I really like that.
What I think I'm going to do. I'm not sure whether that's being a bit too clever. So I need to consider that a little bit. But am I interested in double Chelsea defence? Absolutely not.
Exactly.
And that is kind of, I think, the deciding factor potentially for me to make that move. I think that is where I'm likely to go this week. My bench is literally Pedro Porro away at Liverpool, and that's it. I think I'll have to hope that all of my players play. But with most, if not all, clubs out of Europe, I think that I'm going to take that risk. So that's where I'm looking at it at the moment. And you, I think, are a lot more interested than I am, though, in general and also in FPL.
I'm not sure about that. But yeah, for what it's worth, though, I think those are the exact right moves for you, by the way. And it's not just killing 2 birds with 1 stone. It's almost killing 3, because you're getting rid of 2 injury doubts. That's 2 of the birds. And then you're also getting rid of a double Chelsea clean defense, which has been a nightmare. So yeah, really, really like that. I really rate those moves. In my team, I do have 3 flags at the moment, just like you. All 3 of which are defenders: Shah, Gusto, and Van Heck. We're pretty confident that Van Heck's out for the season. Obviously, things could change, but even if they do change and he's fit again, not really sure I want him anyway. So pretty likely to get rid of Van Heck this week over the other two. Just one, because of prognosis, you'd imagine that Shah and Gusto are more likely to play again by game week 37. So I'd like to hold on to them if possible, and then reassess ahead of game week 37 in case I do need to take a hit to get rid of them. Obviously, Shah could even be fit for game week 36. We just don't know yet. So Burnley is a good fixture. Don't want to get rid of him just yet. Gusto, ideally, I'd like to get rid of him, but I think unless he is actually ruled out of 37, he probably stays. So Van Heck will be one of the transfers out. I need to make a decision on whether it's a Man City defender or an Arsenal defender I prefer. I think because I'm not going to be going for De Bruyne, most likely it's going to probably be a Man City defender for now, just to finish off the triple up. Then it's between Gvardiol and Walker. Same deliberation and same points of discussion there as you. So I need to really think that through. And then the other move that I'm probably going to make for a hit will either be to sell João Pedro for the likes of Ollie Watkins, most likely, as I mentioned, the differential transfer in there, or go a little bit more beige, I suppose you call it, and move Garnacho across to Bruno. I'm pretty firm and confident on the fact that Bruno is a much better pick than Garnacho at the moment. Garnacho has looked good on the eye. Bruno's data is fantastic. He's playing out of his skin at the moment, and I just frankly want him in time for the double game week. Don't think it's essential this week that I buy him yet, so it's whether or not I make that move just yet or wait a week. But either way, I think it's quite likely he comes in ahead of 37.
You can't do it because you have a benching headache.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, wait, what? How so?
So if you did Garnacho to Bruno,
yeah,
and then you've bought Watkins.
Oh no, I wouldn't do all three. No.
Right, okay. Sorry. I assumed you were just going balls to the wall now.
No. It will almost certainly be a -4 this week. I could technically just do a free transfer, but because of the other issues that I need to sort out down the line anyway, I'd prefer to attack now and try and load up on a differential Watkins or get Bruno in early so that I can go into 37 potentially being able to avoid a hit or at least manage with whatever comes up in front of me. But yeah, I don't need to take a hit this week. I just kind of prefer to start playing on the attack a little bit, and maybe some people would call that going on tilt, but I think at this point it's probably warranted looking at my team.
I mean, it has been mentioned in the chat, Garnacho to KDB. Has that crossed your mind?
So I can do it for the money, just about, but it leaves me pretty tight. And then also it locks me out of getting Bruno, and I do want Bruno at this point. Sure. So yeah, I like
crap though. I mean, it's
it is, but it's Bruno. All he needs is a penalty. Like, this is the thing with KDB. I love KDB. He's a fantastic player, but is mainly weighted towards assists. And the minutes aren't as secure as the likes of Bruno. I think he probably will play all 4 of the remaining games, but would I put money on it? Probably not. Whereas with Bruno, you could almost bet your house on it that he's going to play 90 every single week, even with like a broken hand at the moment or a fractured wrist or something. He's still playing. So yeah, I just prefer Bruno objectively, and it also means that I can get a City defender who are much better picks than most of the other defenders I could look at, barring maybe a second Arsenal, and certainly better than looking at a Man United defender. So yeah, it's about combinations as well as just the sheer heads up between KDB and Bruno.
Yeah, fair. All right, so fair bits to consider for you. For me, potentially less so. I think I'm pretty set on mine, but we'll see what the week brings, basically. Cool. All right. Well, I mean, I said at the start we're barely going to get over the hour, but I think we've done all right here.
Almost full that one.
Yeah. Right, finish a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all so much for listening and hearing me moan for an hour and a bit. Anyway, we have been Who Got the Assist. You can find us on X at WGTA_FPL and myself at FPL Pricey, and on Instagram and Threads at WGTA.FPL. And again, I'm just FPL Pricey on there. If you did enjoy today's pod, we'd really appreciate it if you could give us a follow on those channels, but also if you could give the pod a 5-star rating wherever you're listening to it. Or, of course, if you're watching along on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe to the channel. You won't miss any future content, and it does mean the world to us.
Cool. Thanks, Sam. Thanks so much for listening or watching. I hope you enjoyed the pod. I hope you have fought some edges while listening to this going forward, or not. If you're happy with where you are, then I envy you massively. We'll be back next Monday, readying ourselves for the big double of this campaign. All the best this game week. We hope we assisted you.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?